Welcome to People Love Process. Inspiration is a strange muse at times. I never know what will inspire me to create anything. Most of what inspires me, I'd say, doesn't really come from the creative industry or design proper. It's mostly discovered through reading or observation, which piques my curiosity, and that leads to inspiring me to do something. So, in this movie, I want to address some questions I've received about using strokes to create vector artwork, or rather, the balance of using strokes with traditional methods, as with the pen tool or doing shape building, and how they can work together to produce a design, because you don't have to isolate one specific method and limit yourself to just that. You can if the style is appropriate for that type of approach, but in most cases, I use a variety of methods as I create a motif, and that's what you're going to see in this movie. I love reading about and observing historical imagery, specifically symbology. I find it fascinating. And recently I was reading an archaeology post about a universal symbol of the double-headed eagle. Now, in some cultures, it might not be an eagle specific, but it still has two heads. And I found it fascinating. So let's start with that inspiring moment and move forward. This is going to be a fun one involving multiple methods and functionality, as I stated. So let's dive right into it. Now, this was part of some of the inspiration, and this symbol kind of transcends culture. This is found in a bunch of different cultures, and that's represented in this reference image with all these different places. And I'll just point out a few of them. This one right here, which is in stone, this dates back to 555 AD, and it was during the Byzantine Empire. So that's over 1,500 years ago. Like I said, this mark is pretty old. If you go over to the top left here, this is a carving that was found in Constantinople, and it was carved around the 10th century. So that gives you an idea of the age of that as well. This down here, this coin here, this was a coin that was found in Turkey, and it dates to around 1200 BC. If we go to the bottom left, we have Germany, and this dates to 1300 BC. Greece is the one right to the right, and it's 1400 BC. If you go to the right, this is 17th century, and this is in India, found in an old temple. Now, I find it interesting that whenever I'm thinking about a theme, in this case, the double-headed eagle, I always run into other stories that kind of, in a weird way, tangentially relate to it. And there was something Putin said about a couple weeks ago, I think. He said that the double-headed eagle was owned and founded by Russia. It's on their coat of arms is showing here, but this only dates back to about the 19th century with Russia using it, even though this one's from Russia as well. It dates way back. This mark is well over 2,000 years old. I believe it even shows up in Sumerian kind of carvings and stuff, although I couldn't find a really good image of that online. It was too low res to kind of put in this. Now, there's obviously more modern representation of it. If you look at the top right, this is a Masonic lodge that actually uses it on a sculpture found in one of those locations, and the Albanian flag, which is right here, which is the double-headed eagle as well. I found it interesting in India. They have this statue of Hinduism, and you can even see it on the belly down here, a double-headed eagle. So multiple cultures spanning well over 2,000 years. So the symbol's been around, and it means a lot of different things in different cultures, I should point out as well. But I've always thought this symbol was cool, and I have approached this before, but it was well over a decade ago that I did it. And I'm going to show you 3 pieces of art that's from my archive that I have created using the exact same theme. Now, I'd seen a double-headed eagle on an old coin and it was etched, and so I just, as an experiment for myself, wanted to see if I could create a vector equivalent of that, and that's what this one, the top left, is. It's okay. There's things about looking at old art where I look at it now and I go, yeah, I wouldn't have done it that way. So that's normal. That's how you grow. That's how you improve. If you look at the one on the right, this was for a book cover that I did back in the day. And many times this symbol is represented empires. That's one meaning a lot of people have put into it, and that's what the book cover was playing off of. So I did the double-headed eagle for that. I just don't like the inner detail on the wing, and I really don't like the tail, but I like his legs a lot, and you're going to see those showing up shortly because it's a dirty little secret about a lot of designers and a lot of illustrators specifically that do the exact same thing. You're going to see me show you in a little bit. The one at the bottom was I had done a course on textures for LinkedIn Learning, and that was some art that I texturized. It's okay. A lot of things about this I don't like. I really don't like its talons. I would have totally handled those differently now. So you always grow, you always improve. So in this case, I know what I want to create. I've created this theme before. And when it comes to drawing, I only have to draw the parts because I'm going to kind of hodgepodge together elements to give me what I call a drawing mock-up. And that's better shown than explained. But this is all I drew for the artwork we're going to create in this movie. Let's jump to the next screen because this is where I'm starting to create my drawing mock-up. And I wasn't even going to put this in this movie. And then I'm going, you know what? I might as well show them that I do this because it's just using Illustrator as a staging ground for creativity. And so this is usually a separate file. And if there's different pieces, such as this is the scan here that I scanned in, once again, using a flatbed scanner, placed it, usually save it as a bitmap TIFF image or a grayscale TIFF image. And you can place those into Illustrator and you can colorize them. Whether it's a bitmap, the background will be transparent by default, or if it's a TIFF image that's a grayscale, you can colorize it to any color you want. Like on this one, I can select this and color it blue if I wanted to, but I don't want to do that, so let's undo that. But I've just associated it where I want it to go here. I just take a vector shape, select this, and go ahead and mask it. We're going to clone this, Command-C, Command-F. I'll go to the Reflect tool. I'll find a central anchor point. You want to make sure to have Smart Guides turned on. You turn on by Command-U, turns it on. So you can hover over an anchor, you know it's there. Then you can flip it. So that's all I'm going to do here. And we're going to go ahead and select both of these. And we'll just go ahead and paste it behind the other shapes. Oops, I don't want that there, but that's okay. Here's the same image I drew out. That's the three pieces, the head, the tail, and the wing. But I wanted the wing bigger. I didn't draw it that way, but I knew I wanted it bigger. So I've actually rotated it as well. And then I'll just go ahead and take this shape for no other reason than to mask it. And I'll mask that so it's in place there. I know this is going to be kind of symmetric here, especially where these scallop shapes are that form the feathers. I can't talk. Usually I'm not explaining stuff as I'm doing it. So I'm just going to bring this over, and this represents where the center will be. I've already masked the head, and we'll go ahead and clone it. Command-C, Command-F. I have that saved as F3 keyboard shortcut. And if you haven't watched my keyboard shortcut movie, watch it because you could save a lot of time. So we'll reflect that over like that. Now, I could reflect this over, just clone it, Command-C, Command-F, find a central anchor point with the Reflect tool like this, and I could bring that over as well. But actually, we don't need to do that because I didn't even need to do that on the head either. because those elements, we're only going to redraw this again once, and it's going to be a symmetric drawing. But I just wanted to show you how I do a drawing mock-up. And obviously, if you wanted to, I would clone this as well. So I would go ahead and copy that in place and reflect that over. So this is what I do inside of Illustrator just to create a mock-up that I can do a more precise drawing. And I'm saying that because if you look at the wing, this isn't even with these other feathers. So I try to draw it more precisely just so it really guides me. It's pretty close now. I could build with the drawing on the head and tail, but on the wing specifically is where I want to improve on. So that's a drawing mock-up. And then on top of that, I'll just put in the paper I use is the Nina translucent stock. I'll just put it over the top of it, and I draw on what's called a light pad. It's about 3/8 of an inch tall, and it's it lights from behind. And so this is kind of what it looks like. And I draw on top of it more precisely with the mechanical pencil using a .05 millimeter lead. And you can see I'm already thinking this is going to be symmetric. So I'm only drawing out half of it, and I'm not even bothering to draw out the leg part with the talons, because I'm just going to copy that from my old artwork and paste it into place and use it, recycle it, and use it again because I like it. I wouldn't even change it. So, hey, anytime you can do that, I think that's awesome. It just saves time and no reason letting it sit on a hard drive and never get used. So this is my refined sketch. Once I have my refined sketch, like any other time, I'll select it. I'll go to opacity. I'll set the opacity, in this case, to 15. I'll lock the layer. Now, some of you have commented on, well, why don't you draw on the iPad? Well, I do. For specific styles, I do, because I want to ink digitally, for example. I'll do it in Fresco, and eventually I'll share a movie about how to do that. I just haven't put one together yet. But all my sketches, I really prefer tactile. I really prefer pencil and pen. Could you do it on the iPad? Sure, you could do the same thing if you wanted to on the iPad. But I don't like drawing on an iPad like that. My daughter does. She does it all the time, so I don't have a problem with it. It's just my preference to draw an analog. So either way, you're going to produce your best work if you draw it out and figure it out before you try to build it. So that's why I always draw out designs, even though they're graphic designs. Most of what we do is illustrative design, and that kind of plays a part in the concept and why I'm using this double-headed eagle again, because I want to make a secondary brand graphic for my own studio. We do design, we do illustration. Our niche is kind of illustrative design. And one thing this historic symbol is used for is duality, to represent duality. And we have a duality of skill sets in our studio, so that's why I'm creating this. So we're going to start here, and you can see I just have the claw that I pulled off of the old one, and we're just going to go ahead and start building this. Now I want to start building the wing, so all I have to do first is establish the width of this outer shape, and this is the width I want, and that's going to be the same width. Even though I tried to draw it perfect, it's not a perfect sketch. It doesn't have to be. I just wanted to show you this because this is where I start. So we'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to clone this shape, Command-C, Command-F, and I'll go ahead and bring it up like that. And this is where I'll select this corner and I'll just round it, kind of like that. And I'm going to take this, and with Smart Guides on, you can slide down the path of another shape, and it makes doing this kind of work a lot easier if you get in the habit of doing that like that. We're also going to make another copy of this shape, and I'm just going to bring that right there. Okay, once we have that, all I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this shape, and this is going to seem a little odd, but hey, If it works, it works. So it's okay if it's a little strange. I'm just doing this because what I want to do is I want to take this and go like that. Then this one sitting on top, I'll select this one and I'll go with the Pathfinder. I'll go minus front. And with this one sitting on top, I'll select this and I'll go minus front again. So I get that nice little curl at the end. That's the way I would create that. I would just take a square, and this is why I dropped a guide here, because this is the center. So I'm going to snap it to the guide. This is on top. I'll select that and I'll go minus front to trim it. Once I have this, I can clone it, go to reflect, find the central anchor point, reflect it over like this. And this is where I will do something, probably start where I have this head shape, go like that. Actually, I don't want to bring it over that far. Let's do it like, we'll do it right about there. Then that's sitting on top. Then I'll trim it, select the part I don't want, and just delete it. Now I'll select these two elements, unite them like that. Then we can cut it here, cut it there, select the segment we don't want. Drag that down, snap it. Then nudge keys. Nudge keys are always great to use, like that. Then I'll probably take this and I'll go like that. Now, once I have this, this is where you can use the rounding feature in Illustrator. So I'll round these kind of like that. Round this one. Probably end it right so it terminates right about there. And on this one, like that. And we want this one to look like, you won't see it because it'll go behind the shield, but we want it to visually kind of act as if it's connected to the head behind the shield, like that. Now, on these areas here, to create the shape of each of the feathers in the wing, once again, if you're using Smart Guide, you can slide it on the path like that. And it makes it really easy like that. And then this is where, on this one, here's something I'll point out. If you do this, it's a perfect circle. But notice I have this angle tapered. So if you want it to be tapered, just select the corner before you round it and just move it to an angle kind of like that. And then you can get that nice tapering like that. Not a huge thing, but that's how I handle it. And then I'll just go ahead, and on this one here, we'll just trim off this back end. We don't need it because we're building with strokes right now. Now, I don't need this line to go this whole length because I have this shape that does that. And anywhere there's overlap, you're going to create redundant anchor points if you expand it once we figure out what size we're going to use. So I'm just going to slide this down. I could go all the way down until it hits this anchor point like that, because this will be carried by this other shape. So that's how I'll construct it. I'll select this and I'll just clone it, Command C, Command F once again. And then all I'm going to do, actually, now that I think about it, I think before I drag it over, I'm going to drag this up like that. Then it's just about positioning it. And since we have one, we can just snap it to that and slide it. So if I bring it up here and I go, I want to slide it back down to get it in a better position like that, that works. And that's all I'm going to do. Now, I'm going to take, actually, this one would obviously come down a little more like that. To get these scallops, I keep saying scallops. That's what I keep calling these, the feathers. They're the feathers. I'm thinking of shape, not actually what it is. So I'm going to take this wing part, I'm just going to copy it, And we're going to go to the scissor tool, and I'm just going to cut there and cut where this anchor point is. So all I have is the curve part. We can get rid of the others. This is all we need to do this inner detail on the wing. Assuming you want that same angle, and I think in this case we probably do. If you don't, then all you would have to do is just do a really kind of wonky L like that, and then select the corner, and then you can round it, and that will give you a different tapering if you want it to be, if you think this looks better like that. So that's how I do it. And then obviously you just clone it, Command C, Command F, slide it over, snap it. Snapping meaning you hover over the anchor, select it, and then as it hits the path, it'll tell you it's connected, and that's all you have to do to create the detail on that. So I just wanted to show you that's how I go about creating that content for the wing. I'm not going to obviously build the whole wing. We'll jump into it a little more. So once I get further, I have all my wing pieces like this. And as I showed you building it, this part, that's all I need. These are just little smiles, you know, to make up the arches there. And I just repeat that same process as I move forward all the way over. And it gets shorter as it's going on the bottom towards the body shape. That's fine. I just colored these differently, not because my artwork's going to be like that, just so you can see how the pieces are put together, because it doesn't need to be one piece, for example. If we go over here, you can see we have this for the first row of 2 feathers. And then we have these pieces making up the 3 feathers underneath it for his tail. I think that's going to work fine. And then I have this going into the body. Now, based off of the final weight of the stroke we're going to use will determine some of the detailing here, and I'll talk about that in a second. But let's turn on these shapes, because this is the easiest way to make these, is just think in shapes. And these are like almost scales on a fish, even though they're feathers. And if you go back to the reference, there's several of there's at least 2 I can remember off the top of my head that have kind of feathers oriented like this. And I thought that looked kind of cool. I'd never done that on previous ones, so that's why I'm handling it that way now. And this is where it would benefit you. Let's go ahead and turn this layer off at this point, these 2 layers here. This is where using the shape building tool might benefit you. So let's turn on this again. I'm just going to take a copy of this shape and copy it, turn that layer off, and then we'll just paste it on this layer. Because if I select everything now, specifically on this bottom row, select those, select the wing, I can go to the shape building tool, and it will allow me to actually, let's do that one more time. We'll just select everything, including the wing, and we'll go to the shape building tool. Anywhere you hover over, it will add to shape, meaning it'll add to what you have selected. If it has it minus, you hold Option down to minus, it'll remove. And that's what we want. We want to remove this. We don't need it. We don't need this. We don't need this. We don't need this. This here we can remove. This little piece in here we can remove. That little stray, we'll remove this, we'll remove that, this. A lot of people have asked me when they see me working with strokes, they've asked me, do you use the shape building tool? And I do, but only on certain things. And this would be one of them, where we're building not the whole art using strokes, but many parts of it. Oops, that's what you want to be careful at. Make sure you're over the right thing, like that. And sometimes you might have a few artifacts. You can see we have one in there. So this is where you might have to zoom in. And this is why I don't always use this method on some things, but on this type, I would, just because it's just a lot faster than trying to use the scissor tool and rejoining stuff. So we'll just do that. So I think we got everything set up there. So that's one reason I like to use them use them here, is it just makes the process go faster, and I think that's going to work. Now, if I turn on the full wing, we can get rid of this now. That was just to help us edit those. Turn this on, you can see how those work here. Now, this is where I go back in, and even though we're going to beef these up with a larger stroke, I'll slide this down until it hits this path, and then I'll stop it because I want it to terminate right into that shape. And I do the same thing here where I'd want it to terminate there. And on this one as well, I want that to terminate into that path. But this is how I would set up this type of artwork and get it working. Now the final feathers. Here's all the final art, pretty much the same thing. And we're going to go ahead and turn on our base artwork again, like that. And this is where we're going to decide what thickness. Now, I have this shape hovering here, and you might have thought, well, why'd I have that there? Well, one, to remind me, because I don't write notes or do a script as I record these, so I'll forget, but I'm a visual thinker. So I put this here to remind me that this is based off of the spacing we have in the shield. And that's the thickness of, or the width, that is, of this negative space between this inner part of the shield and the outer part of the shield. And I want to match this thickness on the stroke work because these are all going to be strokes and we'll expand them. And what we'll end up with is the fill of the inside of all these strokes. And this will be the gap in between those fills to match what's on the shield. So if we select this, we can go up here and see, you can see it's 3.2801. I'm working in points. When I built this, I believe it was 3 points, but I enlarged everything for the sake of recording a movie, and it always makes it a fractional number. I'd never, well, I think I'm going to make this 3.2801. I'd never do that. I'd just pick 4 or 3 and stick with the whole number. It's easier math. But that's fine. We'll use that. So we'll copy that to the clipboard. And all I'm going to do is select all of these shapes that make up the wing now. And we'll go to the strokes panel. And I'm just going to punch in. Let's see. Oh, let's do that again. Let's do that again. I'm going to select all these strokes. Not sure why it was acting that way. Now I don't remember what the thickness is. 32801. Okay. So let's go over here and we'll like that. Click OK. So that's the thickness I want to establish. Now, one thing I want to do is, depending on how it affects your art, you may want it to be rounded. This is what I do, I'd say 98% of the time, but sometimes where something comes to an end, I like making it so it's actually like sharp on the end. So if I wanted this artwork to be a shape, and this, let's say, is the background, but I didn't want these little soft rounded, then you just turn it to a corner. But you can see on certain angles, it tends to wig out. Illustrator doesn't create those accurately, ironic enough. So that's why I tend to round it. But in this case, we do want to round it. I'm not going to worry about the termination on the end. We just have a flat cap. You could put round there, but I didn't want that rounded. We're going to actually round that manually to get the specific look we want. But I think that looks good. Let's go down here to the tail like this. And we'll just punch in the same number like that. And that will represent what we're going to be using on the tail as well. And ultimately, when we expand these, they're going to be all the same width as this shape here. So I just wanted to show you that. And let's jump to the next layer here, because this is where we're going to go ahead and expand everything. Let's turn off our layers below. We don't need the sketch anymore. All of these, once again, our outline. So we want to go ahead and expand that. So with this is grouped as well. So if you didn't have it grouped, let's say ours wasn't, we'll ungroup it and we'll go object, we'll go path, we'll go outline stroke. So it's going to take the stroke, which is that 3.2801 points, and we're going to just turn them into shapes. So what it does is we go to keyline view, you can see it's just turned it into nothing but filled shapes, no outlines. There's no outlines on this. You can see the red slash through the stroke. Now it's all different colors, so this is where we'll just go unite on Pathfinder. It'll fuse all those shapes together, and that's kind of what we want. But I'm going to do something here because notice how it's on the outside of the shield. Why did I do that? It's because I knew based off of how I built it. Actually, let's just take a few steps back. The original path, how I built it, I knew what the thickness was. So I went ahead and offset it half of that thickness at 3.2801 to get the positioning on this. So when I would select all these shapes, forgot I ungrouped it. Let's go ahead and expand this again. We'll go here and we'll go outline stroke. So we expand all those. Let's go ahead and unite it and zoom back in like this. I knew that because it divided these shapes in half when I built it with the stroke and then expanded it, it now is going to flow right into where that shield is at the right angle. So that's why I built it that way. And you kind of have to think that way as you're working. It's easy to forget if you're not paying attention. Now, this is going to look really hinky, me doing this, but that's okay because none of this matters. As you're going to see, I'm just going to create a shape for no other reason than to edit these shapes. I'm going to slide this all the way over. Once again, you're going, well, that looks weird. It does, but it'll make sense. So I'll select both of these now. I'll unite these, fuse these together. Let's go ahead and zoom out. This one will just reflect over what we're doing on the left, so we don't really need that. We're going to go ahead and select this. Right now, if you go to the appearance palette, it's a compound path, so we're going to release it by going to Object, Compound, Release. And sometimes you might have to, it might be grouped, and if it is, this will be, you'll want to click Ungroup. But in this case, I think we're okay. We don't have any groups going on. We're going to select the outmost shape on this, which is this, and we'll delete it. And so all we have now are just these filled shapes, and that's what we want. So yes, we use strokes, but we have no stroke in our final art. We can get rid of this artifact. We don't want that in. And so this is how I would build the flat art. Notice it kind of matches the style already. And I think that's going to work really, really great. Now let's focus on the tail, because the tail is where we will combine things. So these are all strokes again. We'll go ahead and go to Object, Path, Outline Strokes, turns it all into shapes here. Then I'll go ahead and unite it. Then I'll go ahead and release. Might have to ungroup it, select the outermost shape. That'll get rid of everything. And now we have all the shapes needed for the tail detail. And I think that's going to work great. And once again, once you create one side, and this is the benefit of building symmetrically, you can just copy it, use the reflect tool, find a central anchor point, make sure Command or Smart Guides is on, Command U, then you can reflect it over and you're going to have everything ready to build your base art. Now, this is where I would select all these different shapes. So let's go ahead and select all the blue shapes. We'll select the outer part of this shield. We'll select the head shapes here. We'll select the two claws. We'll select all the tail shapes. And I'm just going to go ahead and go Unite. It's going to fuse everything. It's going to default to the topmost color, which was blue. So that's okay. Let's go ahead and just change it to this green maybe. Or no, red. Red would look cool like that. And let's go ahead and copy it. I'm going to select these, paste behind, because all these shapes will go ahead and minus front. And on this, so you can see what I'm doing, let's color it this. We'll go ahead and unite it. Select this, minus front, and oops, everything disappears. Well, why did that happen? I wanted to show you that because you might have run into this before and you go, crap, what'd I do? Well, you didn't do anything. According to Adobe engineers, that's expected behavior. That's what it's supposed to do, believe it or not. If you select this after we united everything together, it's going to default to a group. And this is why I have a keyboard set up F7 to change to compound. So if I hit my F7 key, notice how this is going to change from group to compound. Now I can select this shape, which is a compound already. And actually, we don't even need a stroke. It wouldn't affect it anyway, but we'll just remove the stroke. With that selected, with this now a compound, I can go minus front, and it acts the way it should. Nothing disappears. But notice the state of the shape changed back to a group. Once again, this is expected behavior with Illustrator, and it's really kind of frustrating, and it throws a lot of people off. So I just wanted to show you that because you might have run into that before and you weren't sure what's going on. Well, it's because compound nature is not retained when you do, well, I shouldn't say not retained all the time, because with some tools it is, with other tools it isn't. So I just wanted to point that out. So I always have my F7 key so I can take a group, change it to a compound path. You know, in this case, we'll change it to black like that. So this is pretty much all the base art for this design. Let's jump into the next one here. Same exact artwork. It's all fused together as I showed, but there's little things I want to improve on. Like if we zoom in on the wing, this looks good, but this comes to a dagger point. These all come to a sharp point. These come to a sharp point. And, you know, even though I've gone in, I've added these little rounds here on this, there's elements of this I don't like. Like I don't like that notch. So I'm going to address that coming up and improve on that. So this is where I really scrutinize detail like this. Instead of just going, it looks good enough. And I don't like how this bottom of the tail looks like here with the point of the shield. I think that's just a little bit odd. So those are the things you'll run into, and you won't be able to figure everything out before you build it. So in the midst of creating, you want to fix those things. You want to art direct yourself. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of those. But the really important thing for this style is I think we need to add rounding. Well, what kind of rounding? You have rounding on the wing, yeah, but I'm talking about subtle rounding. I'm talking about going into areas like this where I know this pointed area, this would be an area where it gets darker if this was a photograph of an eagle and his wings. And we want to imply some of that shading by adjusting this. Now I'm going to use a plugin, but I'll first show you natively. Natively, you could just select the anchor point if you have the corner widget turned on, and then you can just use the corner control to do that. It's okay. Although you might have noticed at certain zoom ratios, you go to select an anchor to move it or adjust it, and you trigger the rounding. That's what I don't like about it. That's why I tend to have it off most of the time, and I use a plugin because on the plugin you never run into that, and you don't have to select anything. You just hover over anything that's a corner, and it's remembering the last time I used it, which was a huge round. But in this case, I can just pull. That looks good, and if I think that one looks good, hey, maybe I want to use it on this one, and I'll just click. This is why I use it. It just makes the whole process go faster. So this is all I'm going to do. I'm going to go into areas of my design and just add this kind of rounding to improve everything. Like on this down here, you know, maybe the tip, even these are a little sharp. So we could even add ever so subtle rounds like this, I think really improves. we can go back to this one. I can sample the first one I did and say, hey, I'm going to use that same tolerance on this one down here. So that's, and you can do, once again, everything I'm showing you now, you can do natively in AI using the corner widget. It'll just take you a little longer. But I think those kind of rounds really improve a design. Even up here, I'll put subtle rounds here because I think this is far more graceful than just having it come to a corner. I'll go into these areas and I'll put subtle rounds here just because it'd be a little darker in those areas. So that's all I'm talking about. Is it something, let's say you're doing this for a client, is it something they would notice? Probably not, but you should, as a designer, you should notice it. So if we take a look up close at the head on the right and this wing, this is without rounding. Here's with subtle rounding. So I'm just going to toggle it, rounding, no rounding, rounding, no rounding. So even where the head comes into the shield, rounding that makes it look so much better. So that's why I take the time to do subtle rounding to add it. Now, as I pointed out, there's several areas of this I think can be improved. The main one is the tail. And if we zoom back in on the tail, notice I rounded that and I thought that looked better. But then I'm looking and I'm going, well, why does it just have this line here? I don't have that same styling anywhere else in the motif, just the tail. That looks a bit odd. So I wanted to fix that. So I fixed it. I just simplified it and that works a lot better. And I think it's going to work a lot better. The other area are these areas on each side. I just thought this ended up, in my sketch, it looked fine. When I built it, I thought it'd look fine. But then in all practicality, I think it just kind of draws your attention for no good reason. I just think having a simple curve from this inside wing into the side of the shield would be better. So that's what I'm going to address now. This is how I would handle it, where it's easier just to build a shape like this on each side, playing off of this edge of the wing, and then making a copy of my original shape. And this is where saving shapes as you're building. I usually always have a layer called the X layer, and I put copies of shapes. This is where I went back to my original shape of the shield just so I could get this edge here. And then doing the straight edge was the easy part. So always save stuff. Always, I just put it on my own layer, and I started calling it an X layer years ago for a silly reason that I'm not going to bother going into. Because I like the X files. That's why. Yeah, it's stupid. Okay, so I'm just going to pull these over like this. I'm going to select these ink. And this is the dirty part of vector building. This is like nothing special, but this is what I want to do just to make sure that this is going to build a nice clean shape. I'm going to select this one, and this is where it goes into a curve into the foot. I don't want to destroy the curve, so I'm going to go up here and use the anchor point tool, grab this Bezier curve handle. That way I can adjust it without screwing up the corresponding curve in the next segment of the path. So that's all I'm going to do, and I'm going to do that on both sides. So we'll just pull this over, pull these anchor. Oh, I had an extra anchor point there. There you go. Redundant anchor points when you shape build. Even though I have the setting in Illustrator turned on to avoid redundant anchor points, they still happen. And they will. That's just the way it is. Actually, okay, I'll share a story with you. I'm at Adobe Max, and I'm getting irritated with Illustrator because I kept getting these redundant points. And I go, why does this happen? I asked one of the engineers, and he goes, oh, that's because Illustrator's too precise. I couldn't help myself. I just started laughing. I'm going, yeah, right. Okay, whatever. I never ran into that when I used freehand for 15 years. So if I select our base art here, once again, it's a compound. If I select the shapes we're going to edit it with, this is a compound too. So I'll select both and I'll just go minus front. Think of a cookie cutter punching through the cookie dough and getting rid of what you don't need. That's all we're doing here. And notice I clean it up like that. But notice, once again, it reverts back to a group. So I want to change that back to a compound. You always have to watch that or else it'll kind of catch you off guard like that. And, oh, Here I'm so busy telling you the stupid engineering story that I forgot to do some. So thank God for Command Z. We're going to undo this because I forgot to do the most critical thing. And the most critical thing is I have to round these. Does no good to round them, not to round them. That's the whole reason we're doing this. And then I totally space on it. Also, it'd help if we pull these in far enough like that. There we go. Let's go to this one. Focus, Vaughn. Stop getting off on rabbit trails. Okay, there we go. That's what I meant to do. And because I decided to share a story with you, I forgot to. So we'll select both of these. Both of them are compound. That's fine. We'll go minus front. Boom. There we go. It'll revert back to a group. Make sure to change that to a compound. And this is pretty much the final mark. So I really like the way this is coming out, but we're going to dial it in now and we're going to colorize it because this is going to be a secondary brand graphic for my own brand for Glitchka Studios. And you already saw the color. I used it a little earlier. My brand color is this kind of a dusty crimson color. This is my brand mark. That's going to be on the shield like this. And I decided to go ahead and add a little spark to represent inspiration. And we're going to work in some typography with this. So Glitchka Studios, original illustrative design. So this is how the final design came out. Now, the name of this movie implies I'm going to use this as a wallpaper design, and I am. So I'm going to walk you through that really quick. The nice thing about this kind of style of graphic is it works great on a colored or photographic background. So here's the version with white. So everything that were the gaps just read as dark when it's on a dark or colorized background. My studio is based in the Pacific Northwest. So maybe instead of red, we do a nice green since there's a lot of trees here and it rains a lot. So there's a lot of greenery in this area as well. So great graphic, works on any kind of styled or photographic background. But I want to turn this into wallpaper. So we're going to do a little bit of pattern work. Now, obviously, this movie isn't specifically geared to be on patterns, but once again, we're using multiple methods in this movie. And I'm going to show you how to do a quick and dirty pattern. Now, if you want to learn more about patterns, I have 3 movies on my YouTube channel that you can watch. And you might be thinking, well, this would be easy to create this pattern using repeat grid. Well, you could mock it up, definitely. It would not create a pattern swatch. It doesn't. Why they developed that and didn't make it so it could, I have no idea. I've complained about that since day one. And if you watch my movie, I'll show you an example of how I used it to mock something up. But then how do you reuse it? How do you apply it to different shapes? Well, you can't unless you mask it. And that's really not a pattern fill. That's just, again, mocking it up. So I'm going to show you how to do it from scratch. So we have our mark here. We have my logo type in a stack version. And I just set this up. So we have a bounding box. And the bounding box is key. Notice this is directly center and snapped to the top middle edge of the bounding box. I have the same mark going half off the right of the bounding box, but on the bottom right edge of the bounding box, this divides on the right side. Now, why am I doing that? It's because whatever goes off on the top or bottom, right or left, needs to come in on the opposite side. So if I select these 2 shapes and I go F3, which is Command C, Command F, and slide it over, this is actually the repeat it's going to make. It's going to come in on the right side, but we don't need that. All we need is this. But this is how I'd set it up, and I'm going to show you how easy it is. We'll just go ahead, select everything, drag, drop it into swatches, deselect, and now we have a swatches, a pattern swatch. I'm going to double click. That will take us into pattern mode. And you can see it's already mocking up based off of the selection of the art, but that's not correct. So we're going to click the pattern tile tool. And I'll just go ahead and I'm going to pull these out because we're going to use this bounding box to snap. So we'll snap it on the right like that. Notice it's showing you how it's coming in on the left, but we need to snap this to the left so it divides it in half. Then we'll snap this to the top, and we'll snap this to the bottom. We don't need the bounding box. That was just for us to register everything in the pattern tool, and they'll delete that. Now we have a nice pattern, and it's a reusable resource. So all you have to do at this point is we'll just call it GS pattern, like that. I'll go ahead and click it. Now to exit out of pattern mode, you can just hit the escape key or double click on the background or exit up here using this menu. The easiest thing is to just hit escape, brings you back to the artboard. And this is where I'll just demo how you can fill something with it. So if I select this fill and click my pattern swatch now, it's going to fill this with that pattern. And that's pretty cool. Now, let's say you wanted to add more fills to this same shape. If you go to the appearance palette, you can see we have a fill. Let's go ahead and pull this out so you can see it better. You can see we have the pattern fill here. We're just going to go ahead and add another fill. It'll make a copy of the last swatch used, which is the pattern. So we'll leave that on top. This bottom one, we're going to change this to a fill. And you're going, well, that doesn't look good. You can't see your pattern on top of it. Well, the reason why I'm showing you this is we're going to do a tone on tone. So I'm going to go back into the pattern mode and just Command A to select everything. Because we're using global colors, we can go to the color swatch. Right now it's 100% value. We're just going to knock this down to a tint of 85, like that. And then we'll go ahead and hit escape to get back to the artboard. And now it creates a tone on tone pattern. Is that not pretty cool? So that's another argument for using global colors, because if it's not a global color, you can't make a tint of it. But it's really fun to do this type of work. Let's go ahead and put that back in. Go to layers, and I think this is going to make a great wallpaper. So you could have the background with this pattern in it. You can have the mark floating on top. Once again, works in good and one color. And this is what I'm going to turn into a wallpaper that I'm going to use on my iPad Pro. So the design I walked you through in this movie, I'd started working on about a month ago, and as I was working on it, a client approached me who wanted an eagle in his brand mark. Now, I had been thinking double-headed eagles so much that I actually showed him a double-headed eagle. I had mentioned it in the comment, but then not thinking, I just did a double-headed eagle, and he came back, actually, I only want one head on my eagle. And that was he does leather work. It's really cool. I'll be posting that soon on social media and our website. But I'm kind of waiting for some nice photos of the handcrafted wallets he does with it kind of embossed in it. But I had eagles on my mind and immediately started doing a double-headed eagle for him. And that's not what he wanted. So pay attention when you're working. He liked the design in general, but obviously we went with the one-headed eagle for what that project. If you follow me on social media, you're going to see that here pretty soon. Out of all the double-headed eagles I've created, this makes the fourth one now. I like this one the best. And as you can see, I use Illustrator as a staging ground to compose and print out drawing mock-ups just to help me with my creative process. So I encourage you to think outside the app. Make Illustrator work the way you want it to work through. There's entire styles I do using Illustrator as a staging ground for doing collage, but it has no vector art in it other than I'm using vector shapes to maybe mask things. And I'll take you through one of those movies sometimes because it's a lot of fun to do that type of style. I did one for the Tiger King when that came out on Netflix. So maybe I'll show you that and then show you how to create your own and show you a great resource using the Smithsonian's archived artwork, which is free for anybody to use. So that'd be a fun one to go over. But I really like the way this came out. I hope the methods I showed in this movie are going to help you. And just to remind you, A link to access the exercise files for each movie can be found in the movie's description on my YouTube channel. If you like this movie, I'd appreciate you sharing a link to my YouTube channel on social media. That helps us get the word out. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe as well. Thank you for those who've been asking questions. I enjoy meeting new people and answering those for you as well on my YouTube channel. This movie was based on a few questions I received. So if you have any questions of your own about vector art or anything in this movie or any of the other movies, by all means, please ask your questions. Thank you for watching People Love Process. I hope this content helps you improve your own creative process.